What are you doing over there, gunslinger?
I'm adjusting my seat. I wasn't comfortable. I need to get into my flow in order to do this.
Flow.
Welcome to the CodeX Cantina. I am Una.
And I am Crypto.
You sound tired.
No, this part of the book is just so boring.
I sense sarcasm from you, sir.
Yes.
This week we did chapters 4 through 5.16, and we'll finish it off part 3 in the next section.
Yes.
What Crypto is referring to is we've heard a lot of commentary that this middle part right here, right before they get to Lud, basically, is really boring. This is the best part of the book.
Well, because we analyze books different than your traditional, I think, reader, where the first part of the book is the training montage and all the action with the bear and stuff that we've talked about, and no spoilers, but there's some good stuff that comes up in the end with some cliffhangers and action and the climax to the book. And so,
well, I'll say this: the first part and the third part, like this book was ripe to be just converted into a movie, right? There's way too much work to try to figure out how Gunslinger would work, and also just structurally. If you have so many linear adventures, it's probably more of a TV show. So the fact that they had announced and now canceled, sad, the Wizard and Glass for a TV show, and the movie was a hot mess. I don't understand why we don't tackle the Wastelands and just turn this into some type of a either really long Lord of the Rings-esque like movie or make this kind of the TV show. Because
I think this one could easily be converted into like the third or fourth season. Really bummed about the TV show because, Wizard and Glass would have been a great start to Roland's story, and then they could have done Gunslinger sort of as like flashbacks, I think, in like season 2 being mainly the drawing of 3, and could have just been like, when he's hallucinating, when he has the illness and Eddie is pulling him along and stuff, you could have had those been flashback scenes of him being delirious. That's how I would have shot it as a director or done it as a writer.
this would have been the one where, like, at work, you're like, dude, it keeps getting better.
Yeah, be like, oh man, you got to the bear? Oh, I won't spoil it. Like, people have been talking about that. Like, oh, have you got to the train yet? And, oh, can you believe, Eddie and, this would have been, could have been a really awesome season.
All right, so what did happen in this section? We had Jake rejoined the group with Oi, the Billy Bumbler.
Oi.
Oi, oi. They pass the muty animals as they head to this town where you kind of have like a Wild West kind of feeling as they walked in, with it being deserted and everyone's in the rooms watching them.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you could... Oh, this would have been ripe for the series, right? It would have been...
Tumbleweed comes across the... No,
yes, exactly. Like, there's dust everywhere, and you see like the quick movement in the window with somebody, and Eddie's a little twitchy, and so good, so good.
And then they get introduced into the beautiful Garden of Eden where things live.
Yep.
This is where they have the palaver. They talk about the train, and they talk about their kef, how they're now communicating telepathically, like, we're just doing this, guys. Like, and then we have the riddle battle, the bridge scene, and then they split up, and that's where we've stopped at this point in time. So now let's turn it over to the discussion. Crypto, where do you want to start with this week's?
I think we just hit our main point, like we've been kind of hinting at, and this really gets into, this is Lord of the Rings, written by Stephen King in a different, venue. Mm-hmm, I think that the comparisons are undeniable at this point in the story.
So what happens? So plot-wise, what happens after Rivendell?
And they go to Cold Mountain. I don't know. They go to the Alps or whatever, and they get stuck there. So Gimli says, "Let's go under," and they kind of have an argument. And Aragorn and Gandalf have been arguing the whole time of which way they're going to go, and they always, ended up leaving it to the ring bearer to make the choice, and he makes the choice to go under there, and Gandalf's afraid. And as they're moving forward, do they go around the city, all right, and that's the mountain, or do they go through the city, which is under the mountain in Lord of the Rings?
And then they refer to the ring bearer, Jake, to make that decision, right?
Yep.
So, okay, so let's come back to that one later, because I think rather than belabor that, we're going to keep coming back to that through these videos.
Sure.
I want to talk about the church.
Okay.
That's obviously an important part, because we're in what would appear to be a nuclear disaster, right? Like
Tinted at heavily, yes.
oh yeah, because you've got all the muties, right? You've got people going sterile.
Yep.
You've got the white bees, and I think you know the backstory of the white bees or what it could be alluding to.
Yeah, in early industrial age of England, there were moths that started changing color because of the massive amount of soot that was being propelled into the air. And I think that this is something kind of similar that King is writing about, of the changing the color of the bees signifies the changing of the environment by a man-made destruction.
Well, specifically, the moths were white to blend in with the white bark.
Yeah.
With all the soot, they started to change color, not because of the soot, but started to change to black to fit in this new environment, right?
Yeah, to try to hide from their predators.
And then we have the closed church. Now, which is, I think they said it was angling too, but do you notice how many times Stephen King has... Is there ever a healthy church? And any Stephen King writing, it has to exist somewhere, right? Like, he had to have at least one healthy church, no?
I don't think so. I mean, if we look back at some of the stuff we just recently done on our channel, the tall grass, the church was all dilapidated.
Yep.
This one, the church is dilapidated. If you look at some of his other stories, Pet Cemetery, the church is falling apart. In The Stand, that's a very religious style story. The church is falling apart. I forget which one it is they go into and they don't find sanctuary. I think it's Tommyknockers. I haven't read that book in 2 decades, but there's a scene in there with the church as well. And yeah, I mean, this is just anti-religion Stephen King coming out at his best or worst, whatever your affiliation with religion is. You
had Carrie, whose mom was a little cuckoo. Kind of comparable to, was it Sylvia in The Gunslinger? The crazed church following the false priests of Baal, where we made that comparison in our Gunslinger video. Yeah. You have not even just church specifically, but strange religion. You had Pet Cemetery with the Indians, and what was it? The ground is
tainted.
Is it tainted? The ground is spoiled?
Spoiled? Yeah, I don't remember the word.
I can't remember the word now, but it's very clear. So you and I have the background when we went into Gunslinger that Stephen King is against organized religions. And it's so obvious in these writings. Like this is pelting us in the face at this point in time with how much Stephen King we're doing now. It's kind of remarkable, honestly.
It's very obvious. Yeah, it's a punch in the face.
All right, one more thing. Okay, so the poem that we read for this, the T.S. Eliot, The Wastelands. Do you remember what bridge was falling down?
London Bridges.
I felt like we had a little bit of a nod to that too, with this George Washington Bridge decaying.
Yeah.
Right, because that story was about the Fisher King having a barren land, unable to produce, your heirs for the future. The old Fisher King story. Well, here we have the wasteland and the people going sterile. The bison has 2 heads. The bees can't make a hexaco or whatever it is, honeycomb anymore.
Honeycombs, yeah.
So I don't think you had to have, you obviously did not have to read the poem, but I think we're seeing a little bit more influence than what we had remembered from our previous readings.
Yeah, this one feels like there's a little bit more connectivity between the two. I still don't think that you need to read it if you're even the most diehard Stephen King gunslinger there is. I still think that it's something that you can pass on. Unless you enjoy poetry and this, then yeah, maybe it gives you a little bit more of that nod from King being influenced, which we enjoy too. I mean, we enjoy knowing more about our authors and where they're coming from and their influences. But it's ever so slight. Like we're struggling to get it even now.
Well, okay, so what's the bigger picture? What is he potentially, subconsciously, consciously, I don't know which one, trying to convey here? We've talked about how technology has been a theme here throughout this. You had Mir, the bear, is kind of the main first one. And we watch our previous video for a couple more of them. But in this section, right, we have the plane that was downed and had like the Nazi symbol covered up, right?
Yeah.
No one understands how the technology anymore, right? You have the what is it? The old people have disappeared, and I think so. If I'm trying to look at this with fresh eyes, because if you didn't know, I've read up through book 4 decade ago. We have to assume this is a nuclear conversation, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of hints there. Yeah,
the radioactive tapeworm, the sterility, all that stuff. Is where he's going with this one. Is this all leading to a commentary on the technology and the evils of technology and how it kind of resets humanity?
I like that. Yeah, I think that he is portraying that nature will take back no matter what we make or do. We will undo ourselves. And that's been done many, many times before. But yeah, that could be what he's trying to convey. It's
kind of like the Sarah Teasdale poem, right?
Yeah.
That man can destroy itself and nature wouldn't care. He's painting all the things that are good in this world don't have anything to do with technology, right? The things that he or are not man-made for that matter, right? The church, is that man-made or is that natural?
Man-made.
Right. Now the bridge that's fallen apart, man-made or natural?
Man-made.
Okay. Now things that he thinks that are good in this book, like the telepathy, the Kef, where now they can communicate, the bumbler, where it's one of the last of its kind that can still communicate, natural things, right?
Yeah.
I don't think he's doing this on purpose. This isn't like a main point, but I think it's very clear that the preferences of what Stephen King was thinking at this point in time is coming out in technology resetting man, or man resetting itself and being bad, while a natural, more organic way is better. Like, just go ahead and throw in organic food in here, Stephen King, while you're at it. Complete the picture.
Yeah, the next book title is going to be "Don't Vaccinate."
Yeah,
all natural, all natty.
Next book's called "Don't Vaccinate and Eating Raw Vegetables."
Paleo subtitle :
No, it'll be like one of those scenes like you don't know what's going to happen in Wizard and Glass if you've never read the series before, right? Yeah. So I'm picturing now like you walk in on a wizard and he's just munching on a celery stick.
My last thing is I thought a lot about when I was listening to it, and I feel like our only perspective of this is from Eddie, and not that that's a contributing factor of my thought process or deters me or sways me one way, but it is just one person that's kind of hinting at this. In many other regards, he always says what Susanna thinks, because her thought process is a little bit different because she's from the 1960s. And then it gives Eddie's perspective and then Jake's perspective because they're from the 70s, 80s, which is still very drastically different, even though they're closer and they actually met and whatnot. Mm-hmm. But in this regard of the nuking, it's only Eddie that points this out. And I don't know if this is a false pretense that King is giving, because what would really happen? I mean, even if magic existed in our world today, or there was a multiverse, if we nuked our planet, would anything change besides the environmental factors? Because the world has moved on, and whatever apocalyptic event happened in Roland's world did more than just affect the environment. It broke the rules of reality. So would nuking actually do that? No. An atomic warfare, on a global scale, if everybody launched off their missiles, it would just destroy most life on Earth, but it wouldn't change gravity, it wouldn't change time, it wouldn't, maybe ripping open holes to parallel universes. Not saying there isn't technology that couldn't do that, but I feel like it's hinted at, but only by Eddie, because maybe their technology was slightly different in Roland's world. There was some apocalyptic event that happened, but it wasn't what we think it is, because we're looking at it from our perspective. It was like they had some type of collider or some type of other super fancy device that they used to attack one another, and that's what broke down the natural rules of reality, which
would point back to a man-created event bringing disaster, right?
Yeah. No, definitely. I agree with that 100%. It's that technology versus nature argument. Yeah. Easily. That's very apparent. But to say it's what event it was, is we're going off just to Eddie, who is from our world, and how he would perceive all of the things he's seeing happen in nature. And it hasn't been specifically clear of what the apocalyptic event was.
I'll tell you what, I'm starting to feel a lot of red herrings when it comes to literary writing in some of this. I don't know if you've noticed this, but with the man, when they both came out, he was the first one to fall. Right? And he cuts his hands on the cobblestones. I'm like, okay, we're talking about potentially the fall of man. We're talking about cutting his hands. I think we're going to be talking about stigmata, right? The blind woman named Mercy. Like, this is screaming Bible at this point in time. I think maybe I'm missing. Maybe there's a nice analogy there, but I feel like this is fake literary writing where he's just kind of playing up some stuff that has happened. But the problem is if you don't do it with a point, it feels like I feel like I'm being cheated when he does this.
Yeah, it's disappointing because what is the payoff?
Right.
Is he just doing it because he likes that, because that's his style? But again, because he's used this to certain means before in books, why just continue using the same old shtick?
Well, and here's, okay, so some people may say, well, you're looking too much into it. But I feel that is 100% an excuse, because then it shouldn't be in the book.
But that's what we do here.
Well, if
and we're allowed to do that.
If you don't have a point to it, you can write however you want. I don't think it should be in the book. If you have useless pages, whether it's not conveying something or moving the plot forward or talking about something with society, it's a waste of my time.
Yeah. And I think that could be the argument of why people don't like this section of the book, is because you could take out a few chunks here and just say, all right, they left here and 7 days passed and they made it to Lud. And you could cut out the plane, and you could cut out the bees, and you could cut out, the old people, and you could cut a lot of that stuff out and cut out a few hundred pages, and it wouldn't change the story at all. Not really.
Well, what he's doing is he's taking his Silmarillion and jamming it into his Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. And that takes us back to maybe the only thing that's there is the riddling, right? It would take us full circle.
Oh my
no
gosh.
pun intended, Lord of the Ring.
This. Oh, I see what you did. This is very Hobbit though, right? But we'll go more, I feel like, into this Hobbit comparison in our next video. And I don't want to end on a negative note. Like, I feel like some people may think that's me coming down on it, but that is me coming down on writing. But I'm still very high on this book. Like, I really do enjoy this book. But I feel like I owe it to people to call out. If I see something negative, I have to say what it is, right?
Yeah, we're just critiquing it. Doesn't mean that I'm not probably going to rank the book overall very highly. It's one of my favorite of the entire series. But I think that we're allowed to nitpick a little bit here or there, since that's what we want to do.
Did you know that this is my least favorite of the 4 Dark Tower books that I have read?
Really? You like this one less than the Drawing of 3? Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Too much action for you?
My maybe my favorite is Wizard and Glass, then it's Gunslinger, then the Drawing of 3, and in last place right now is the Wastelands. We'll see what happens as I get to the last 3 books eventually.
Wait, Wolves you'll be okay with. The last one you'll be okay with because it wraps everything up. However you want to form your opinion on that, that'll be very divisive. I think that you'll probably Song of Susanna is where you're gonna. That book
you think I won't like it? Okay, all right. We'll see.
I think it will become your least favorite. I know it. I know you. I know the book. I know that. Yeah.
Well, we have been doing this for 3-4 years now, so.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thank you for checking out this video and our ramblings. We're going to wrap up the Wastelands next week, where we're going to go a little bit more into the literature side of things, of what is happening behind the scenes with this work.
Peace.